Beverly Hills, a world of sunshine and luxury. Mansions gleam, palm trees sway. But behind the high walls and manicured lawns, darkness can fester. The Menendez family lived in this world. They had it all: wealth, status, a picture-perfect life, or so it seemed. This is the story of the Menendez brothers, Eric and Lyle, a story of betrayal that culminated in an unthinkable act. Jose and Kitty Menendez had built a life most could only dream of. Their sons, Eric and Lyle, seemed to have it all. Private schools, designer clothes, a life of luxury. But the perfect picture hid a horrifying truth. Behind the closed doors of their Beverly Hills mansion, a nightmare unfolded daily. The brothers lived in fear. Their parents, the people meant to protect them, were their tormentors. Whispers of abuse began to surface. Whispers of physical and emotional torment. Whispers the boys could no longer contain. The pressure built. Resentment simmered. On a sweltering August night in 1989, the situation exploded. Jose Menendez, the patriarch, was a force to be reckoned with. Born in Cuba, he clawed his way to the top. He became a successful executive, driven by an insatiable hunger for success. He demanded perfection, both in himself and those around him. His ambition, however, came at a cost. His temper was legendary, his wrath swift and brutal. At home, Jose ruled with an iron fist. He saw his sons as extensions of himself, expecting them to excel in all areas. Any sign of weakness was met with harsh criticism and often physical punishment. Eric and Lyle lived in fear of their father's volatile temper. They walked on eggshells, never knowing what would trigger his rage. The pressure to please him was suffocating. Beneath the surface of their privileged lives, Eric and Lyle carried the scars of their father's abuse. Kitty Menendez, their mother, was a woman trapped. Once full of life and dreams, she'd become a prisoner in her own gilded cage. Married to a domineering man, she'd retreated into herself, her spirit slowly eroding under the weight of Jose's control. She loved her sons but seemed powerless to protect them from their father's wrath. Kitty bore witness to the abuse, the constant tension that permeated their home. She tried, in her own way, to shield Eric and Lyle from Jose's harshest punishments. But her attempts were often met with anger and ridicule. She sought solace in alcohol and prescription drugs, numbing the pain that had become her constant companion. Her sons watched as their mother, once a source of strength and comfort, slowly unraveled. The Menendez family was a powder keg waiting to explode. Years of abuse, secrets, and simmering resentment had created a toxic environment. The facade of their perfect life began to crack, revealing the dysfunction that lay beneath. The brothers, once close, drifted apart, each grappling with their own demons. Eric, the younger brother, was sensitive and withdrawn. He struggled to live up to his father's expectations, his failures met with harsh criticism. He found solace in music and writing, pouring his pain and anger into his art. Lyle, the elder, was more rebellious, his resentment towards his father simmering just below the surface. He acted out, seeking attention and validation outside the suffocating confines of their home. The tension in the Menendez household reached a fever pitch. The stage was set for a tragedy that would send shockwaves through the nation. August 20th, 1989. The air hung heavy over Beverly Hills, a sweltering summer night. Inside the Menendez mansion, tension simmered, reaching a boiling point. The brothers, Eric and Lyle, were alone with their parents. The air crackled with unspoken words, with years of resentment and fear. Dinner was a tense affair. The clinking of silverware against china was the only sound. Jose, domineering as ever, held court at the head of the table. Kitty, her face drawn, sat silently. Eric and Lyle, their eyes downcast, ate their food mechanically. After dinner, the family retreated to the den. Jose settled into his armchair, his newspaper held up as a barrier. Eric and Lyle were left alone with their father, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Suddenly the silence was shattered. The deafening roar of a shotgun echoed through the house, followed by screams that were cut short. Jose Menendez, caught off guard, slumped in his chair, his lifeblood staining the expensive Persian rug. Kitty, drawn by the commotion, rushed into the room, her face etched with terror. Before she could comprehend the scene before her, another blast ripped through the air. Kitty cried out, collapsing onto the blood-soaked carpet beside her husband. Eric and Lyle stood in the doorway, their faces pale, their hands trembling. The house, once filled with the sounds of their parents' anger, was now eerily silent, except for the ringing in their ears. The shock wore off, and a chilling clarity set in. Panic surged through them. What had they done? They had to get out, had to escape the horror they had unleashed. But first they had to cover their tracks. They moved like automatons, their minds racing, their bodies numb. They collected the spent shotgun shells, wiping down the weapons with a cold, detached efficiency. They disposed of the evidence, their movements becoming more frantic with each passing moment. They needed an alibi, a story to explain the unexplainable. They left the house, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They went to the movies, a desperate attempt to cling to the remnants of their old life. The days after the murders were a blur. Eric and Lyle Menendez moved through life in a daze, their actions a haunting presence they couldn't escape. They put on a mask of grief for the outside world, but behind closed doors, the weight of their crime pressed down on them. They were living a lie, a charade of normalcy in the face of unimaginable horror. They threw themselves into a whirlwind of spending, a desperate attempt to outrun the guilt that gnawed at them. Expensive cars, designer clothes, lavish gifts, material possessions became a shield against the emptiness that threatened to consume them. They told anyone who would listen about their grief, their pain at the loss of their parents. But their words rang hollow, even to their own ears. As the weeks turned into months, the brothers' carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The police, initially sympathetic to the grieving sons, grew suspicious. The sheer brutality of the murders, the lack of forced entry, the whispers of family secrets, something didn't add up. Investigators began to dig deeper, uncovering a trail of inconsistencies in the brothers' stories. Their alibis unraveled under scrutiny, their lavish spending raising red flags. Whispers of the brothers' possible involvement in the murders turned into accusations. The media, sensing a sensational story, descended upon the case with a vengeance. The net tightened. Detectives brought the brothers in for questioning, their every word, every gesture scrutinized. Eric, under the weight of guilt and fear, cracked. He confessed to the murders, his words pouring out in a torrent of anguish and remorse. He painted a harrowing picture of years of abuse, of a desperate act to escape their father's tyranny. Lyle, confronted with his brother's confession, maintained his innocence. But the damage was done. The police had what they needed. On March 8, 1990, 7 months after the murders, the Menendez brothers were arrested. They were charged with the first-degree murder of their parents. The trial of Eric and Lyle Menendez began in the summer of 1993, and it quickly became a media frenzy. Cameras crowded the courtroom, hungry to capture every twist and turn of this sensational case. The world watched, captivated by the unfolding drama. At the center of it all were two brothers, forever bound by a shared history of privilege, abuse, and ultimately murder. The prosecution presented a simple, damning narrative. Eric and Lyle were motivated by greed, eager to inherit their parents' fortune. The evidence, they argued, was clear. The sheer brutality of the killings, the lack of forced entry, the brothers' lavish spending spree after the murders. The defense countered with a story of desperation and self-defense. The brothers spoke of years of horrific abuse at the hands of their father, of living in constant fear, of feeling trapped and hopeless. The trial captivated the nation. sparking heated debates about abuse, justice, and the limits of self-defense. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some saw the brothers as victims, driven to a desperate act by years of unimaginable suffering. Others saw them as manipulative killers hiding behind a fabricated tale of abuse to escape justice. Talk shows buzzed with discussions about the case. Legal experts dissected every detail on cable news. The Menendez trial became a cultural touchstone, reflecting society's anxieties about family dynamics, the long-lasting effects of abuse, and the complexities of the justice system. The trial also ignited a national conversation about the often hidden epidemic of child abuse. The jury deliberated for weeks, grappling with the conflicting narratives and the weight of the evidence. The pressure was immense. The eyes of the world were on them, waiting for their verdict. Were the Menendez brothers cold-blooded killers motivated by greed, or were they victims of abuse driven to a desperate act of self-defense? The jury had to decide not only the brothers' fate, but also send a message about society's tolerance for violence and the limits of justice. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the jury foreman read the verdict. On the counts of first-degree murder, the jury was deadlocked. A mistrial was declared. The prosecution retried the brothers, this time without the possibility of the death penalty. This time, the jury reached a verdict. Both Eric and Lyle Menendez were found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Menendez brothers' trial, with its lurid details of wealth, incest and violence, captivated the nation. It was a real-life soap opera on the nightly news. Viewers couldn't get enough. The brothers, with their youthful good looks and claims of abuse, stirred revulsion and sympathy. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some believed the brothers were victims. They saw the trial as a referendum on child abuse. They argued the brothers had no choice but to fight back. Supporters saw the guilty verdict as a miscarriage of justice. Others saw the brothers as cunning manipulators. They viewed the abuse allegations as a ploy to escape responsibility. This camp applauded the guilty verdict, seeing it as a victory for common sense. The Menendez trial sparked a national conversation about truth, self-defense, and family secrets. It forced people to confront questions about privilege, abuse, and the American dream. The Menendez case continues to fascinate and disturb, even decades later. It has been the subject of countless books, documentaries, and television specials. The brothers, now middle-aged men serving life sentences, remain objects of morbid curiosity. The case had a lasting impact on how the media covers high-profile trials. The Menendez trial highlighted the dangers of trial by media. More importantly, the case shed light on the often hidden epidemic of child abuse. The trial helped to break down the stigma surrounding abuse. The Menendez brothers' story is a tragedy on many levels. The Menendez brothers' case remains a haunting enigma, a tangled web of privilege, abuse, and violence. The jury's verdict provided a legal resolution, but it did little to answer the fundamental questions at the heart of the case. Were Eric and Lyle cold-blooded killers driven by greed, as the prosecution argued, or were they desperate victims of abuse, pushed to the brink by years of torment? The brothers' claims of abuse, while contested and ultimately rejected by the jury, resonated with many. Their story forced the nation to confront the uncomfortable reality that abuse can flourish behind closed doors, even in the most affluent families. It sparked a conversation about the lasting trauma of abuse and the often blurred lines between victim and perpetrator. Yet the sheer brutality of the murders, the calculated cover-up, left many questioning the brothers' claims of self-defense. The prosecution's portrayal of Eric and Lyle as greedy, manipulative individuals willing to kill for money struck a chord with those who saw the brothers as more cunning than damaged. The Menendez case, with its ambiguous evidence and conflicting narratives, offers no easy answers. It remains a chilling reminder that truth is often elusive, and justice, even when served, can be a bitter pill to swallow. The Menendez brothers' story, rooted in Beverly Hills, carries universal themes that resonate today. It's about the corrosive nature of secrets, the impact of abuse, and twisted family ties. The case sparked a national conversation about child abuse, a conversation that continues today. The brothers' claims helped break down the stigma, encouraging victims to seek help. It forced society to acknowledge the prevalence of abuse and the need to protect children. The Menendez case highlighted blurred lines between victim and perpetrator. Can someone who has suffered abuse be held fully accountable? This question challenges our legal system. The legacy of the Menendez brothers is one of pain and unanswered questions. It's a cautionary tale about the dark side of the American dream and the power of family secrets to destroy lives.